in front of the computers, but actually we should be in Venice. We should have a nice final event in Venice, but unfortunately the current pandemic does not allow us to do so. So we know life is quite complicated at the moment, so we have to face this also with the finalization of our project. And we decided at the end to organize the final event in the form of a webinar, and that you will be hearing today the main results of starting with the ideas, what we wanted to do in our project, and the main results we achieved. Before we go to our project, REEF 2W, I would like to ask Mr. Pignatelli, the head of Energy and Biomass and Biotech Lab of ENEA, to give us his welcome address. Mr. Pignatelli, please. The floor is yours.
Okay. Is everything okay for the audio?
We can hear you. Maybe you have to speak up a little bit louder.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Segman. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this final conference of the REEF 2W project. My name is Vito Pignatelli. I am the head of the Biomass and Biotechnology for Energy Laboratory of the ENEA Energy Technology Department. And I bring you greetings from the director of the department, Mr. Giampiero Celata, who apologized for not being able to be here because of other commitments. This project has as its object the correct management of municipal waste, which we also consider an important source of renewable energy. Our department is directly involved in the development and the diffusion of the use of energy technologies, mainly renewable energy sources. And this project examines the state of the art of the main technologies for the valorization, obviously, of this kind of resource. Organic waste generated in urban areas, whether wastewater or solid waste, represents, as you know, a major environmental problem, if not properly managed and treated. The treatment platforms have always consumed large quantities of energy for the treatment of this biomass, thus contributing to increase, obviously, the GHG emissions in the environment. But we know that this waste contains a large amount of energy inside them, well above the needs related to their treatment. There are still few examples in the world of platforms for the treatment of wastewater or waste that have adopted innovative solutions to recover the energy contained in them. And very often, these solutions focus on an very limited or reduced economic energy balance within the plant of the treatment. Very often, however, this type of vision does not allow you to make the most of the energy potential of these materials, often leaving a large amount of energy unused. The REEF 2W project seeks, with a more general and integrated vision with the territory, to provide assessment tools that can be useful both to the plant manager and to the public administration, allowing both to evaluate the best synergies that can be had for the territory. The collaboration that has been established between research structure and industrial partners has made it possible to evaluate scenarios that, when applied, could allow a large reduction in GHG emissions in the areas involved. This concludes my brief speech, wishing you all a good working day. See you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Pignatelli, for this nice welcoming words. We will start our webinar with showing you a short movie on the project. So we produced a short movie, and Filippo or Alessandro, I think it's up to you to start the movie, please.
Mr. Mayor, the Waste Collection Centre bill has arrived.
Mr. Mayor, there is a lot of movement at the treatment center.
Oh, how can we keep our city cleaner?
Mr. Mayor, we need to update the plan for the Covenant of Mayors.
Managing the energetic and environmental situation has become a difficult undertaking.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to show you something.
What is this about?
With this solution, we can apply circular economy to energy recovery. Thanks to the treatment of wastewater and organic solid waste, a lot of energy can be recovered. We can produce electricity from biogas, create new biomethane and new biofuel as well, and recover heat from the treated wastewater of your city.
But how can we do that?
With REEF 2W, the European project that gives us the tool to calculate the feasibility and the benefits of applying this method, so that the City Council can adopt the new solution, knowing precisely the investment and the benefits. REEF 2W, or Interreg project, offers the possibility to do a feasibility study and start-up aid to recover energy from wastewater and solid organic waste for a cleaner city in a way that is more efficient and more sustainable.
So after this short movie that setting the scene and introducing the basic concepts, I would like to ask Diego Santi from Enea to add a little bit of information on the basic concepts of the project.
Good morning to all of you. My name is Diego Santi. I used to be an Enea expert, but at the moment I'm working on the project on behalf of Montefeltro Servizi. Today I have the difficult task of replacing Roberto Farina, who is the chairperson of the project and who was unable to join us for quite sound reasons. Now I will try to share my my screen to select my presentation. So, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, everything fine.
Okay.
Good. The project, the basic concept of the project is quite simple. Wastewater treatment plants and municipal waste plants are great consumer of energy. Here you have the situation in the USA, but in Europe, where we were not able to define, to find aggregated figures, the situation is quite similar. So a substantial amount of the electrical energy used in the various countries is for the treatment of the waste. But there is also some potential on the waste. We can, in principle, recover energy, thermal energy, chemical energy, other kind of energy. And the project has the objective of enhancing the energy efficiency of this kind of infrastructures, as well as producing some renewable energy to decrease the impact of the infrastructure on the environment. Basically, you can recover from biomass and from wastewater and chemical energy producing biogas, and you can have here a principal scheme for the production of electric energy and thermal energy from the biogas. So the project has been set up to enhance this concept and involves 5 countries in Central Europe. That is Italy, Austria, Germany, Czech Republic, and Croatia. Not only among the 10 partners of the project, there are 5, the project involves 5 private companies in the activities for a duration of 3 years. The scope of the project is to identify possible critical points for the energy efficiency in the waste treatment plants, to define strategies and technologies, and to evaluate possible scenarios for the waste treatment platforms, integrating, whenever possible, wastewater, and other renewable energy sources. To provide an assessment of the excess of energy available that can be delivered as electricity, heat, biofuel, and so on. To provide tools and methods, interactive tools, able to help policymakers to get their decisions. To provide an environmental assessment of the actions implemented. And last but not least, to provide an economic assessment. All of us, we know the importance of the economic issues on the municipal lives today. Then we wanted to identify obstacles and barriers from a legislative point of view, and to involve local authorities to test the tool, to use it, and to contribute in its improvements. As a key point, we have identified and selected 5 case studies to evaluate the technical solution, and at the end to test the tools set up by the project. This pilot involve small and big municipalities, a variety of local situations. They involve waste and wastewater treatment plants, and here you can see the locations of these 5 pilots studies. Then, in these pilots, we have considered a range of different technologies, but the tools allows for the improvement of these technologies in future, taking into account possible technical developments. The approach used in the project is an integrated sustainability assessment approach. That is, not only technical aspects are taken into consideration, but also the location, the suitability of the locations of the plants and their impact on the landscape and on the territories. The overall environmental assessment and the economic assessment, all these aspects are considered in the tools set up by the project. And in setting up of these tools, we had a strong involvement of the users in the collection of data, but also in the checking the suitability of the tools. This is a general scheme of the logic scheme of the tools. Don't worry, we don't need to get through this scheme in detail, but in brown you have the waste treatment plants. In blue there is the water and wastewater treatment plant treatment procedure, and in green you have the output of renewable energy produced. This is a screenshot of the first page of the tool that is possibly usable for non-specialistic users, where you can choose which aspect you consider, from the energy assessment to the spatial assessment and the impact on the territories, the environmental assessment, and at the end, the economic assessment. The next presentation will go through in more detail on these aspects. At the end, you get a report comparing the initial situation of the plant with the future situation, with improved situation, and the comparison is made on all these dimensioned aspects. The project organized a variety of other activities, such as training courses for groups of public administration and stakeholders delivered in all the 5 participating countries. Training courses to train experts and advisors to enable them in the assistance of municipalities wishing to implement this kind of vision. The setting up of action plans at regional levels, local levels, to enhance the impact of the project, but also at the Central Europe levels and European levels. And for this, we had the signature of a memorandum of understanding with political authorities. Lastly, all the activities and experiences gained in the project will be put in a book which in detail describe these kind of experiences and is a real guidelines on how to implement REEF2W plants. At the moment, I've finished my presentation. Thank you for your attention from the REEF2W team. For future contacts, I give you the contact detail of Roberto Farina, who is the project manager. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diego, for this further introduction to the project. We are well ahead of time. What you have seen in this presentation, the last picture Diego showed, was the last physical meeting we had in November last year in San Leo, close to Rimini, which was very nice indeed. Okay, I would like to ask my colleague Florian Kretschmer to present us what you already heard, the approach in a little bit more in depth. Yes, thanks Diego for closing your screen sharing. And Florian, can you share your screen to continue with the presentation? We cannot hear you, Florian.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, we have some problems with sharing the screen now. I don't know where the problems come from. We will try again.
Then maybe we have to do the alternative route. Let's ask the colleagues from Camerato do Veneto to screen the presentation then.
Yeah, when we tried it this morning, it worked, but now we cannot share. I have no idea why.
Alessandro and Filippo, can you share the presentation of Florian, please? Okay. Sorry for this, but this happens in this kind of meetings, like in physical meetings, that there are some minor problems, but we are on the way to solve it soon.
It tells me that I do not have the rights to show my screen. I don't know, this is new, because before we tried it, it worked.
Alessandro, can you please check this, if there's a problem with the rights? Doing that. Okay.
I will try again. And now it looks better. I think we solved the problem.
Okay,
I think it
seems we are on the way. No. Okay.
Yes, I think now you can see it.
Yes, perfectly. Florian, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank God we are good in time, so no problems with some technical issues anyway. So also a warm welcome from my side. My name is Florian Kretschmer. I'm from Boku University, and I want to continue now with the introduction on the REEF2W approach. Diego just gave you a first impression on what REEF2W is about, and I now want to go into more detail. Maybe just to summarize the background very briefly, I think you're all aware of it, but anyway, climate change is an issue, not only the COVID pandemics, but also climate change is an issue, and this topic is coming back into focus now, we're happy about, and so the REEF actually is, the REEF project, REEF2W project is somehow aiming and providing some contribution to counteract climate change. We are, let's say, the world is on search for renewable resources, and in this context, wastewater is also getting more and more into the focus. Why is that? Diego already mentioned some points, but I will try to repeat them. Wastewater is interesting because of different purposes. Wastewater can serve as a source for the generation of different types of energy. Wastewater and waste, by the way, actually, yeah. Out of wastewater and waste, we can generate electric and thermal energy. Digester gas is here a very important aspect. Digester gas comes out from the anaerobic digestion of the wastewater or waste or the sludge, which is, of course, quite an important source and quite an important task in our REEF2W project. The next thing is the thermal energy, which can be recovered from the wastewater. Wastewater contains a lot of heat coming from showers, coming from dishwashers, coming from industrial or commercial processes. This heat is available, and this heat should be used as well. And in addition, at the treatment plant, so let's say the wastewater facilities, we have a lot of space available. So this space can be used, the rooftops or whatever, can be used to recover energy from solar. Or we could apply hydropower or even wind power on the premises. Wind power is maybe a bit exotic, but anyway, it can be mentioned because at the treatment plants we have space, so it could also be an option. For instance, at the treatment plant in Vienna, they have wind generation. So this is the one thing. We have different opportunities to generate energy out of the wastewater, out of the waste. And as Roberto also already showed on one of his slides, there is quite a lot of energy, and we will come back to this issue about the energy amounts later this day. But anyway, a lot of energy, and not all of this energy which can be generated is needed at the treatment plant itself. So we have electricity demand, heat demand at the treatment plant, but the energy we have available is way more to cover the internal demands of the treatment plant. So it's not only to supply the wastewater infrastructure, but a big issue is when thinking of using energy efficiently in terms of counteracting climate change and in terms of the energy transition, we should use all this energy we have. And if we cannot use it at the treatment plant itself, okay, we have to broaden up our views. So we have to go to the neighbors of the treatment plant. We have to go to the adjacent settlement structures, because there they also have demand for electricity, for heat, for energy in general. So this is also a very important issue in our REEF2W approach, that we do not only focus on the premises of the wastewater infrastructure, on the treatment plant itself, but we open up our view beyond the fences of the treatment plant. We go into the settlement structures as well. So what is now the concept of REEF2W? We have, let's say, a 5-step approach. We address different issues. We want to address the issue of energy generation out of wastewater, out of waste, from a multi-discipline or from a multi-issue perspective. Of course, the most important aspect is the energetic context, because the energetic context addresses somehow, yeah, our key aspect, the energy. Is there energy available at the treatment plant? How is the energy used at the treatment plant? Is there optimization potential in the use of energy? And do we have excess energy, which could be provided to the neighboring infrastructure? When dealing with the neighboring infrastructure, we have to go one step further, which then considers the spatial context in our approach. The treatment plant as a source of energy has a fixed location. And same can be said for the heat consumers. So for the settlements, they can be developed, so they are maybe somehow a bit flexible, but basically the households, the settlement structures, they are also already located. So we have a spatial context, we have a spatial reference between the treatment plant as a source of energy and the settlement structure as the consumption point of energy. And only if these two things match, let's say the energetic context on the treatment plant, we have, let's say, surplus energy, and we have on the other side energy demand, then it makes sense to continue. And if we have, let's say, excess energy, and if we have energy demand, then we go on in a third step, in a fourth step, to assess the environmental context and to assess the economic context of the designated supply criteria. And when we have collected all this information on the energy aspects, on the spatial aspects, on environmental and economic aspects, we, in a concluding fifth step, made the so-called integrated sustainability assessment, or sustainability assessments, so plural. So we have, let's say, one status quo scenario where we can analyze the energetic context, all these different points. We can define some future scenarios, so we can define scenarios which would be interested for my very local specific context, for my case study, whatever. And for this scenario, we can also calculate these different, or address these different contexts. And out of that, we have the different information. And in the integrated sustainability assessment, we get the picture for one scenario. And I wrote assessments because we then can compare the pictures of the different scenarios we investigated, and out of that we get an idea which supply scenario is most promising. Because I want to state, I want to make clear, our REEF approach should help decision makers, should help wastewater utilities, should help planners to investigate possible supply scenarios. It should highlight the most promising scenarios, but it will not deliver the very best and detailed solution. But we would just give an overview, which is the most promising path to follow on. And after our first pre-assessment in the REEF 2W, a detailed planning can be the next step. But we provide feasibility studies and provide the information. Is it worth to follow this idea, or should we go another way anyway? So this is about the approach. On my next slides, I will go into more detail now for the different contexts. So the first context is the energetic context. In this energetic context, we address different issues. The first is the energy efficiency. We want to identify optimization potential concerning the energy use at a wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater treatment plants have different technical processes. They have the pre-treatment, they have the activated sludge process, things like that, sludge treatment. They need energy. They need electricity, and they need thermal energy. And in our assessment of the energy efficiency, we want to see whether the current energy consumption is efficient or if there is optimization potential. This is the first thing. The second thing in the energetic context is we want to identify all the available resources for the generation of renewable energy. Many treatment plants across Europe are already equipped with, let's say, anaerobic digestion. We will go back to that in the third presentation today, but anyway, it's not only about anaerobic digestion. As I mentioned before, we have different types of resources, like the wastewater heat, like solar energy, things like that. We have to identify, or we want to identify, all the available resources at the treatment plant. And in addition, we also address the use of alternative energy approaches or technologies in the REEF. So we want to address or recommend the application of novel techniques to also increase the energy output or the energy efficiency at treatment plants. And all these three aspects here, they should help us to get an idea about the surplus energy potentials available at a wastewater treatment plant. Because this is what actually all is about in this energetic context. How can I make the use of the energy more efficient? And how can I use that so far unused surplus energy? For the energy efficiency, the energy efficiency is about the comparison of the electric and thermal energy consumption at the wastewater treatment plant. Either we have a look on the entire plant or at selected treatment technologies. And we want to compare the current energy use, the current energy consumption, with standard ranges. For the comparison, we use Austrian experiences. We use standard ranges derived from Austrian benchmarks, which can give a first orientation where to have optimization potential. The comparison shall be explained with this table here. We have different treatment steps, so let's say energy consumers at the treatment plant, from an electrical point of view and from a thermal point of view. We have, let's say, energy consumptions for the mechanical pre-treatment. We have energy consumptions for the biological treatment, for sludge treatment, things like that. And we indicate energy ranges, energy consumption ranges for the different steps, or for the treatment plant in a total. These energy consumptions are related to population equivalent, so to the current capacity of the treatment plant. And we know the total energy consumption of the treatment plant at least. We know the current load of the treatment plant, so the population equivalents the treatment plant is dealing with. And out of that, we can calculate for our investigated treatment plant an energy consumption, for instance, a total energy consumption. And we can compare this with the standard ranges. And if we are within the ranges, it's quite fine. So the energy use is, let's say, already in a quite efficient, or the energy is used quite efficiently. If we are out of these ranges, if we are below, it's nice. We use less energy than the standard ranges. So that's quite nice, but of course will not happen very often. What can happen is that our treatment plant is beyond these standard ranges. And if it's beyond these standard ranges, we have an idea where we could do some optimization work to make the energy use more efficient. So this is the idea of the assessment of the energetic efficiency in the REEF2W approach. The second aspect is the generation of renewable energy. We have different sources to generate energy out of. It's the sludge or the waste, it's the wastewater, and it's solar energy. I do not address the wind power, or let's say, not address the wind power, but anyway, it's mentioned. No, but the important thing is we can generate energy out of the sludge, the waste. Out of that, from anaerobic digestion, we get digester gas, and this digester gas can be used in terms of generating electric energy, for instance. Out of the wastewater, we can apply hydropower in the effluent of the treatment plant, we install a turbine or a screw or whatever, we can use it to generate electric energy. And same for the photovoltaics, which is quite obvious. So we have a lot of open space, roof areas at the treatment plants. Installing PV panels help us to generate electric energy out of the solar. And from the thermal point of view, the same again. We can generate energy out of the sludge or the waste. Again, the sludge, the waste is anaerobic digested. We have the biogas can be combusted, and out of that we get heat. Out of the wastewater, we can recover this heat. We can extract the heat which is available in the wastewater, so we can provide thermal energy. And again, we have a lot of open space in the treatment plants. It's not only usable for the application of PV, but also for solar thermal. So we can also generate heat out of the solar energy. PV and solar thermal can be combined in hybrid systems, but this is just to be mentioned. So these are the two aspects. Basically, we can provide electric energy, we can provide thermal energy. The biogas has some special position in here, because we can also, what we can also do is to leave the biogas, to upgrade it and use it for, let's say, feeding into the network, into the existing natural gas supply network, which brings me to the last aspect of the energetic context, which is the alternative energy approaches we consider in REEF. The biogas upgrading can be one thing. So, of course, it's quite obvious, or it's clear we could use the available digester gas in a CHP unit, combined heat and power unit, to produce energy and heat. But we can also upgrade the biogas and feed it into the public network, which can be an issue, which is an alternative approach. One important thing is the biogas, we want to increase the yield of biogas generation. We want to improve the digestion performance, and for that we address in the REEF2W approach the co-digestion and the hydrolysis of the sludge or the waste. The goal is to increase the biogas, as I said, because more biogas means more gas to be fed in, or more gas being available to generate electricity or heat out of it. And another aspect is the energy generation out of sludge. Sludge is a big issue. Sludge has to be disposed as well. Of course, the anaerobic digestion of sludge has already been mentioned, but of course, gasification or the incineration of sludge can be an issue to generate energy out of it. Gasification can provide additional gas, for instance, and the incineration, which is a big issue when also dealing with the approach now phosphorus recovery. We have to incinerate the sludge. When we incinerate the sludge, we have a lot of energy available again. And this energy should also be considered, and not only saying, okay, I have the sludge incinerated, we have the ashes and we can recover the phosphorus out of it. No, we have to have an integrated approach. We have to deal also with the available thermal energy out of this incineration process. These are the aspects which we, let's say, these novel aspects or new approaches we also want to address in our REEF2W approach. And all this, again, this energetic analysis should give us an idea about the surplus energy available at a wastewater treatment plant. But it's not only about the availability of surplus energy, it's also about the availability of energy consumers. Because if I have a lot of surplus energy but no consumers around, makes things difficult. Maybe not so difficult when dealing with, let's say, electricity supply, because electricity can easily be fed into the grid and can be transported on a very long distance. Same for the treated biogas. But for the heat, it's, of course, a bit a different issue. The heat is therefore very important. Diego also showed it on one slide, and we will also address this issue in the third presentation today. We have electricity at the treatment plant, but the treatment plant has high electricity needs. So usually it is very, very difficult to cover the wastewater treatment plant internal electricity demand. For selling the gas, the treated biogas, yeah, the gas can also be transported, but then the gas is missing at the treatment plant. So the question is always, is it for me as an operator of a wastewater utility economically interesting to sell the biogas? Because if I sell my biogas, I have to get the electricity and the heat I need on my plant from other sources. So this is also a discussion. But what we have, and what Diego nicely showed on one slide, we have a lot of heat available at the wastewater treatment plant, way more heat that can be ever used internally at treatment plant. So when dealing with an efficient use and when dealing with energy supply from wastewater or from waste, we have to address heat supply. And heat supply, for the heat supply, the supply distance is an issue because we have heat loss. And therefore, the spatial context is of crucial importance. We address this in our REEF2W approach, and we call it the urban compatibility assessment. And this compatibility assessment considers the energetic context of the settlement structures around the treatment plants. We want to integrate the surplus energy of the wastewater treatment plant into the adjacent settlement structures. Because only if heat consumption is available for our surplus heat, it makes sense to go further. Because if there is no demand for my energy, if there is no surplus energy, no need to go into more detail, obviously. But the same can be said if there is no consumption available or no demand available. No need to make an environmental or economic assessment or to make a detailed analysis, because there are some crucial parts I'm just missing. To address this issue in, let's say, in a feasibility study in a very rough way, we defined in our REEF2W project different types of heat consumers. We call them hotspots of thermal energy consumption. We define different types of consumptions: villages, town centers, multi-storage buildings, commerce and industry, agriculture and forestry. I don't want to go into detail here, but we define different types of consumers. And for these different types of consumers, we assign heat demands, specific heat demands, and also grid lengths for the internal supply, but this is not so difficult to, or not so important to address now, but the heat demands are important. Because if we know we have, let's say, a little village around my treatment plant, we know the space of the village. We know we have, let's say, a village of 1 or 2 hectares or 3 hectares, whatever, and out of our REEF approach, we know the heat demand of, let's say, this type of heat consumer per hectare, and then we can easily calculate the heat demand of this settlement structure. And we can compare the excess energy available on my treatment plant, and we can compare that to the heat demand in the settlement structure, and then we get a good idea whether these two figures match. If we can, let's say, cover the heat demand of the heat consumers, or at least cover it partly. And if those two things fix together, then we can go on further. Before we go on further, I just want to give you a short idea on this spatial context. We defined not only these different types of consumers, but we also tried to find good pictures, for example, so that the user, that the planner or a municipality or whatever, get an idea from his ortho photograph or whatever. I have, in my specific context, this type of settlement structure or this type of settlement structure, and out of the REEF2W, one can easily get the information, what is the average heat demand of such a settlement structure. So it's a basic information to make a rough estimation whether my heat demand can be covered totally, or at least to a certain extent. This is what our spatial assessment basically is about. And as I said, if, let's say, the supply side and the demand side fit together, if we have surplus energy and if we have related energy demand. We go a step further, then we can make the environmental, we go to the environmental context and check the environmental benefits of our dedicated supply scenario. To evaluate the environmental benefits, we actually address climatic benefits. And climatic benefits in terms of CO2 emissions and global warming potential, respectively. A suitable method to address these environmental or climatic benefits, in our point of view, is the life cycle assessment. And based on this, let's say, concept of life cycle assessment, we apply in our REEF approach, or we suggest to apply factors, global warming factors or CO2 emission factors for our invested scenario. So we have a specific scenario. We know we want to apply, for instance, anaerobic digestion. We want to apply photovoltaics or whatever. We need some energy for that, and we have different processes. And for different energy carriers and for different processes, we have factors. So kilogram CO2 per kilowatt hour, for instance, and out of this assessment, we can calculate, let's say, the total emissions of a specific scenario. And if we have the information of the emissions on one scenario, we can compare it to another scenario and then get an idea which of the intended supply scenarios provides more environmental or climatic benefit compared to another. To get you an idea how this can look like, I think it's very small. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but anyway, in a web seminar, you sit close to your screen, so it's maybe a bit easier to see. But anyway, we have global warming potential factors. Actually, out of the LCA database EcoInvent, which gives a vast overview on different factors for processes and for energy use and so on. And for instance, here you see different energy mixes from the member countries, and you see factors, CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour of electricity mix. So if we apply, for instance, a heat pump in a wastewater treatment plant to recover heat out of the wastewater, we know the electricity consumption of the heat pump, and we know, let's say, a factor for this energy use, and then we get an idea about the related CO2 emissions. And this is the basis how we can do the environmental or the climatic assessment in our REEF 2W. In parallel, we are of course interested in the economic context. This is always a big issue. So, and what are the costs about? So, the economic context in the REEF should give us, in the REEF 2W should give us an idea of the economic opportunities of investigated supply scenarios. We want to consider the economic aspects of the wastewater treatment plant-based renewable energy supply. For that, we have to define investment costs and operational costs, and we also have to consider additional income, which can come from, for instance, sell of excess energy, we sell excess heat, or we sell upgraded biogas, or we can also save some money when we improve our internal energy performance, when we have some energy savings. This has all to be considered and addressed in evaluating the economic opportunities. And in our REEF 2W project, we also define cost ranges, which can be applied to the different supply scenarios, to the different technologies, and those will help us then to make first estimations on the, let's say, costs of a specific scenario, and it will help us to derive, and it will help us on the one hand to compare the costs of different scenarios, then to get an idea which seems to be the more those scenarios which is more interesting from an economic point of view. And it will also help us to calculate specific indicators, as for instance, return of investments, because these kind of indicators are usually, they provide more information or better understandable information because they are more used. And this brings me to the fifth step of our REEF approach, the integrated sustainability assessment. This integrated sustainability assessment collects all the information from the previous steps. It collects the information on the economic context, on the energetic context, on the spatial context, on the environmental context, and the economic context. We developed and we suggested indicators to assess these different aspects, and we also introduce additional viewpoints. We introduce social indicators or social parameters and some technical parameters. And when we then have this big picture, when we have, let's say, different indicators determined, we can make the decision out of that. We can either compare all these indicators in a holistic point of view to see, okay, from an energetic context it's quite interesting, but let's say the spatial context is not so favorable or whatever. So we can address different viewpoints and leave the final decision to the local stakeholders, which have, of course, different local perceptions, which have different local interests. Or we suggest, let's say, to weight these different aspects and to get out one number per scenario to say, okay, this is now, let's say, my weighted factor. This is, let's say, the ISO factor for scenario 1. This is the ISO factor for scenario 2. And the better, the higher the value, the more interesting the scenario, whatever. So these two approaches are possible in the REEF. A more general view where we leave, let's say, the detailed decision to the local stakeholders, or a rather, or let's say, a less flexible, maybe a more strict approach, where we suggest weighting factors and REEF provides then somehow a final idea which are the most promising solutions. So this is the basic idea of integrated sustainability assessment. To summarize this approach in a figure, I want to show you this pyramid. We start in the REEF with a pre-assessment on some general indicators. These general indicators, I will give you an idea how these indicators could look like on the next slide, but the general indicators, the pre-assessment, give me an idea, is it worth to go a step further? For instance, an indicator could be excess energy available, or heat or energy demand available. If these indicators are fine, then we continue with the assessment. We have specific indicators then where we address the environmental or climatic issues, the social aspects, economic and technical aspects. Technical aspects primarily concern energetic aspects. And then we have these different indicators, and out of that we can make the decision on the most promising, the most sustainable supply scenario. Either if we weight these aspects directly, or not weighting these aspects in advance, but providing all the different indicators in kind of traffic-like scheme or whatever. And then we have a big picture, all the indicators with traffic light colors. So some parts are green, some parts are red, some parts are yellow. And the local decision makers then have the opportunity to say, okay, this is quite yellow, but it's not so important for me because this issue is important. The color is not so important for me because the context is important for me. And then the local decision makers can really include their local boundary conditions, their local perceptions in decision making. To make these things less abstract, I want to show you just an example of general indicators. We've defined, as I said, different indicators in the REEF approach. One indicator deals with the availability of excess energy. the indicator is electric excess energy provision or thermal energy provision. We define how this indicator can be measured, and we define categories and the graduation. If you have excess energy available, it's graduation A, for instance, so this is nice. We have excess energy, we can go on. If, let's say, another indicator dealing with the availability of consumers, if we have consumers available, categories beyond 0, again, graduation A, so we have 2 A's, so let's go on. If we have, let's say, no excess energy available, graduation B, but for instance, energy consumers available, yeah, then we can say, yeah, investigations are finished. This does not match. Or we can say, then we have to have another idea how to generate energy on the treatment plant so that we get the availability of excess energy in the graduation A and things like that. So this is the basic idea on the integrated sustainability assessment, to define indicators for all the different perspectives or contexts we address in the REEF2W, to allow finally a decision from an integrated perspective, to get an idea what are the most promising scenarios to be followed in the subsequent detailed planning. To conclude my presentation, as already mentioned, the REEF approach tries to give the user, the decision maker, an integrated view on energy supply out of wastewater or waste. We address energetic, spatial, environmental, economic, and social aspects. We try to keep the approach quite open. We want to provide guidance, of course, for the user, but we want to keep the user. We want to keep users' flexibility, because some boundary conditions cannot be generalized. It's very local specific. We want to provide guidance, but not in a very strict manner. The local operator should keep his freedom anyway. So one has to keep in mind, our REEF2W approach intends to highlight energetic, or let's say, wants to highlight the most promising energy supply scenarios, the most promising options, how to integrate wastewater treatment plants or waste plants in a local energy supply concept, but it does not provide the best final solution. We do feasibility studies, we want to highlight those options which are worth to be further followed into detailed planning then. So this is what I had. I just bring you some literature and my contact details, but anyway, it's not only me who contributed to this REEF approach, I'm just a presenter, but here you find my email address, but anyway, everyone in the REEF project can help you with specific contexts, and if you have questions, you know where to find us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Florian, for the presentation showing the REEF approach in general. Yes, we have time now for some questions from you, from the audience, to clarify some details. So who wants to start with this? Who wants to break the ice? So maybe just before we get the first question, what you still expect today, what you can expect is that we have afterwards, after this clarification round for the approach, we will present you briefly the 5 case studies we had in the project. So we move around in the different countries we have been working in, and after this case studies presentation, we will have the final outcome of the project to present the strategy for the Central European region, for how we think we can implement this or what's the benefit of this strategy for the overall region. So are there any questions? Either you have to unmute your microphone. The alternative would be that you post the question in the chat and I can read it from there. give you a few minutes to think about if you have some concerns. It seems, Florian, that everything was so perfectly clear.
This is the first impression. I think the discussion will start after we also already, when we learned something about the case studies and when we discussed about the strategy and the potential. So maybe the big discussion will be at the end of the presentations here, but
yes,
maybe it was also a lot of information for the moment.
Yeah. But maybe it's a good idea to continue if there are no urgent questions. And I cannot see you all. I cannot see all the participants on the screen. I just see a few. So the idea, maybe the best thing would be if you have a question also for afterwards. We still have time for discussion. If you just type question or something like this, or the full question, or just type I have a question in the chat, then I can see it. And then I know who has a question. If this is because it just to continue with the program, then if there's no further question, we will move on and start the presentation of the case studies. And Pavel Janicek from the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague will give us a short introduction to the case studies that we had in the project, and then we will go around, we will walk around, travel around the different countries and look at the case studies in a little bit more detail. So Pavel, if you can share your screen and start.
Okay, thank you, Ginter, for introduction of this part of our webinar. I will try to share my screen. Could you see my screen?
We can see. You just have to start the presentation.
Is it visible?
Yes, but we just see the PowerPoint and not in the presentation mode. Now it's going. It's
okay.
Working.
So my name is Pavel Janicek. I'm from University of Chemistry and Technology Prague, Czech Republic. And I would like to introduce now our REEF 2W case studies. So in this part of our webinar, we would like to introduce case studies based on the application of the selective innovative technologies related to renewable energy sources in the wastewater treatment plants. What was the main aim of the pilots? It was mainly verification of selected technologies in specific conditions of different countries, and of course also in specific conditions of different wastewater treatment plants. Therefore, we selected, as it was mentioned already in presentation of Diego, 5 wastewater treatment plants where pilots were tested, and the main output of these studies was elaboration of the feasibility studies based on the experience gained during these pilots. And the feasibility studies consisted of 4 parts. First part was focused on evaluation of energy efficiency and savings, and renewable energy sources evaluation. And for this evaluation, we were using the software tool which was introduced already before. Second part of the feasibility studies was focused on urban compatibility assessment against it is possible to use the software tool mentioned. Fourth part of feasibility studies was related to economy, so it means analysis of financial options and also financial options for supporting of the investments. And finally, fourth part of the feasibility studies was dedicated to application of integrated sustainability assessment, which was described and explained in Florian presentation. So in this part, we are able to compare the status quo and the innovative technology which is tested from holistic point of view. So in this short introduction, I don't want to go too much in detail. So now we will present this pilot. Each project member country evaluated the specific type of technologies and in a pilot. And as you can see, in Austria, the pilot was focused on thermal energy recovery from the wastewater. Mainly in Czech Republic, it was biomethane production, upgrading of biogas to biomethane. In Germany, thermal hydrolysis and power to gas technology. In Croatia, co-digestion, and in Italy, biogas production optimization. So it is very brief introduction of case studies and pilots, and now we will introduce country by country our pilots. So I would like to ask a representative of Austria to start with their presentation. Here are our contact details, of course, and all partners involved in our project.
So thank you, Pavel. As you mentioned, we will move to Austria. My colleague Georg Neugebauer from BOKU will be giving this presentation. Pavel, can you stop sharing your screen? Thank you. Then, yes, Georg is already here. Under the synonym of Peter, but it's Georg Neugebauer. They have been meeting today in the seminar room of the Institute to be together for the for this seminar. So Georg, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pavel, for the introduction. Thank you, Günther. Can you see my presentation? Is it okay?
Everything fine.
Okay, everything fine. Hello from my side. My name is Georg Neugebauer. I'm senior scientist at the Institute of Spatial Planning, Environmental Planning and Land Rearrangement at BOKU University. And my task is now to give you with a few slides a brief introduction into the Austrian case study in the REEF2W project. Our local partner in the REEF project was the Municipal Association Reinhaltungsverband Drattnachtal. The Municipal Association operates a wastewater treatment plant in Wallern an der Drattnach, where the wastewater of 13 member municipalities is treated. The treatment plant is, as indicated in the map that you can see, located in Upper Austria, about 35 kilometers southwest of the Upper Austrian capital, Linz. And I will show you some characteristics of the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plant has a capacity of about 74,000 population equivalents, and the annual wastewater flow is around 6 million cubic meters per year. And the wastewater treatment plant is designed for an anaerobic sludge stabilization, and since 2008 on site, a co-fermentation is also operated, a co-fermentation of waste. And this means an increase in sewage gas production, sewage gas generation, and consequently also the energy heated. And a look at the energy balance of the wastewater treatment plant shows clear results. Since the implementation of co-fermentation, no more natural gas is drawn from the grid and more electricity is generated than is consumed. The left column shows the consumption, the right column the generation on site of electricity. And only at certain times over the year it is necessary to purchase relatively small quantities of electricity from the grid. Feeding in of surplus electricity into the grid is possible, is easily possible, but feed-in tariffs have become extremely unattractive in recent years, so it is interesting to strive for other own usage possibilities. And concerning the heat side, wastewater treatment plants with digesters have considerable heat demands, but due to the co-fermentation in the Austrian situation, also heat surpluses can be achieved in the pilot case. But for making use of heat surpluses, it is necessary to design also the respective heating networks to supply other consumers. A first step in this direction was already taken by the wastewater treatment plant, by our case study, by supplying a nearby located farm. And the aim of our pilot action in the REEF project was to explore further possibilities to increase, on the one hand, the energy output and to make visible, sensible uses of the respective energy surpluses. The next slide shows you an overview of the intended technology network. In addition to the use of sewage gas to produce electricity and heat, it was intended to install a wastewater heat pump to make use of the potentials of waste of heat included in the wastewater. This enables to recover ambient heat contained in the wastewater, and of course is connected to further electrical energy demand for this purpose, but this can partly covered already by the surpluses of electricity generated in the wastewater treatment plant. And in this way, the wastewater treatment plant can also provide more heat to external consumers, and in this way can assume a supply function in the local energy system. The next slide should illustrate this potential of wastewater heat recovery. We have a mean wastewater flow in our case of around 6 million cubic meters of wastewater. And this volume is steadily available. This effluent is discharged continuously. And when we reduce the average temperature of the wastewater, over the year it is around 14 degrees. In the winter months it's a little below 10 degrees. Then we can make use of the thermal energy extract it from the wastewater by the means of a heat exchanger. And for instance, as indicated in this illustration, a reduction of 2 degrees
Georg, the microphone is not switched off at the moment. It was maybe automatically.
Sorry? So
now you are back.
Okay. What was the last slide you have seen and heard me?
Just the last sentence. Just continue.
Okay, sorry. So this a reduction of these 2 degrees would be result in potential heat extraction of 14,000 megawatt hours, and this is connected to further electric energy consumption of 4,600, and means in total that an heat potential of 18,000 megawatt hours per year could be extracted and could be made usable in the vicinity of a municipality, because this is much more than energy that is needed at the municipality itself. Technically, it would be also possible to cool down more than these 2 degrees of Kelvin, and resulting in further energy potentials that could be provided. Energy potentials that are so far not used and are only waiting to be tapped. And then the question arises only whether there are corresponding heat consumers located around the wastewater treatment plant. And therefore, it is worth to look over the edge of the wastewater treatment plant. And this is what we have done in our case study, applying a spatial analysis. And you can see in the illustration in the map a visualization of energy zones in the surrounding municipalities in Wallernadert-Radnach and Bad Scharlabach, where we have searched for so-called energy hotspots, municipal buildings, multi-story buildings that represent a considerable heat demand. And the energy zones visualized in this map illustrate potential energy zones, potential zones that could be supplied by grid-bound heat supply that show the respective heat densities suitable for such a supply via a district heating network. And from our case study can be concluded from the REEF approach that, on the one hand, from an energetic point of view, wastewater heat recovery increases the energy efficiency. It makes it possible to use not yet used energy sources, as the heat contained in wastewater makes it accessible. In economic terms of use, from an economic point of view, a wastewater heat-based energy supply, of course, competes with other heating systems, but in our case, an analysis of the spatial contexts around the wastewater treatment plant shows in these visualized energy zones also high achievable energy densities that would speak for a district heating network, and offer also possibilities to use excess electricity heat for heat pumps, and therefore indicate good economic framework conditions. And finally, from heat accounts for a large amount of share of the overall energy consumption, and extracting heat from wastewater would in this sense make substantial contributions to on the one hand, transform our local energy system that is based so far concerning the heat on fossil fuels to a renewable source, and in this way also makes substantial contributions to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So, a very short, brief introduction of what comes out from Austrian case, that REEF W solutions with addressing the so far untapped wastewater energy potentials could make good contributions to sustainable energy supply. I would like to thank you for your attention and hand over back to our colleagues in Czech Republic to start their insight in the Czech pilot case study.
Thank you, Georg, for presenting the Austrian case study, and stop sharing the screen, please, and then Pavel can continue with the Czech case study.
Okay.
Okay, so I will now continue with introduction of case study in Prague wastewater treatment plant. First of all, I want to introduce shortly Prague wastewater treatment plant and sludge management solution in this wastewater treatment plant. In this, I have to say that Prague wastewater treatment plant is the biggest wastewater treatment plant in Czech Republic. The capacity of the wastewater treatment plant is about 1.6 million.
Pavel, we cannot see the slides yet. You'll have to share them.
Sorry. So I will try again.
Now it looks good. We're on the way.
Sorry for that problem. So I will continue with the introduction of Prague wastewater treatment plant. So it is biggest one in Czech Republic, and the sludge management technology is based on anaerobic digestion. There is 12 digesters, 6 first stage digesters and 6 second stage digesters, each of them with volume almost 5,000 cubic meter. Nowadays, the use of biogas is solved by combined heat and power production. But in the current situation, after optimization of the digestion technology, the capacity of CHP unit is not enough. So there are used also excess biogas burners. So this was the reason why we decided to focus our case study in Prague in upgrading of biogas to biomethane, and main objective was the assessment for energy valorization of excess biogas through this technology of upgrading of the biogas. So what are the current data about biogas production in Prague? Nowadays, there is annual production of the biogas about 17 million cubic meter, but the capacity of CHP unit is not sufficient, as I mentioned. So biogas utilized for electricity and heat production is only about 16 million. So the biogas which is burned in as excess biogas is almost 2 million of cubic meter of biogas nowadays. In average for last 5 years is a little bit lower, but still very significant excess of the biogas production. In fact, there are two ways how to solve it. One of the ways was the increasing of the capacity of combined heat and power production, or application of new technology. In Prague, because of the aim of diversification of the biogas use, was decided to test the technology of biogas upgrading. So here is the pilot unit for the verification of this technology. And what were the pilot achievements, or what data we can found? So it is necessary to stress that we are comparing two scenarios: or the biogas is incinerated, or this part of excess biogas, which is only about 10 or to 15% of produced biogas, which is now not used, is upgraded. So the capacity of biogas upgrading unit is 20 to 250 cubic meters of biogas per hour. By this unit, we are able to produce about 160 cubic meter of biomethane per hour. And this biomethane can be used, in fact, by two ways, or it could be injected into biogas grid, which is available already in Prague, or this biomethane can be used for as compressed natural gas for transportation and replace compressed natural gas. And in this case, it is the capacity of 2,500 kilogram of CNG per day, which could be replaced by biomethane and expressed as green energy. It's 1,370 kilowatt hours of green energy production from currently unused biogas. So finally, to compare the benefits of this solution, we used integrated sustainability assessment method or approach, as it was described by Florian in his presentation. And only briefly about results from environmental point of view. We improved the situation in this table as lower number, as better the technology. So by decreasing carbon dioxide emissions because of replacing of the CNG by biomethane, we achieved this improvement of situation in from environmental point of view, because of expected creation of additional employment. Also social situation was improved. As regard economic point, of course, there will be income related to biomethane selling. So also in this point we have improvement, and from technical parameters, the status quo and new REEF technologies is the same. So finally, we can conclude that in the specific conditions of the Prague wastewater treatment plant, the upgrading of the biogas to biomethane seems to be beneficial and sustainable solution. So here are again our contacts, and we can continue with next pilot.
Thank you, Pavel, for the presentation of the Czech case study. We will go from Vienna. It was to Prague, about the same distance in the same direction. We go to Berlin, to our next case study in Germany, and the presenter will be Mehdi Habibi from the Competence Center of Water in Berlin. So Mehdi, please.
So, can you hear me?
Yours. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Now it's...
So you can see my presentation?
No, we almost saw it, but now it's gone again.
Ah, okay. So I try again. So now?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So perfect. Let's start. So thank you, and let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Mehdi Habibi from Competence Center of Water Berlin, and today I would like to present you the case study in Berlin. First of all, the selected wastewater treatment plant is one of the 6 operated by Berlin Water. And let me give you some background information about wastewater treatment plant. This wastewater treatment plant consists of mechanical treatment, biological treatment, and advanced treatment. We also have a digester for the biogas, and produce this biogas and use it in the CHP system. It was also important to know the energetic data. So as you can see, I show you this energetic data. The most of the energy is used in the biological treatment, and these 3 steps include almost 81% of energy, and this, the digester and digestion consume about 19% of energy. So we use also this data in our REEF tool, and the first for the check up the energy situation in this wastewater treatment plant. So as you can see, this wastewater treatment plant consume about 23 kilowatt hours of electricity per year. And as you can see, it was in the standard range of in the REEF tool. And also regarding the thermal energy, as you can see, it's about 13 kilowatt hours per year, and it's also in the range, in the middle of this range. So as a whole, we could say that this wastewater treatment plant is well performed. So in the next step, as you know, in Germany, the regulation is changing. So for many wastewater treatment plants and also biogas plants, they're burning the biogas in the micro gas turbine or CHP plant is not sensible. So the other options to upgrade this biogas or inject it in the gas grid. So in the case study in Berlin, we try to test 3 options: thermal hydrolysis, biogas upgrading, and power to gas. Because of the time, I just try to present you 3 scenarios that we selected for today. The first scenario, as you can see here, the biogas upgrading, we take this biogas and the sulfurate, and after separating the CO2, we inject it in the gas grid. And also we thought about the power to gas. As you know, it's important with the new strategic in Germany. Water is going in the electrolyzer and separated to hydrogen and oxygen, and we take this hydrogen in our biological methanation process with the CO2 from the biogas upgrading, and we produce more biomethane. So as you can see, there's 3 scenarios that I selected for today. The first one is the status quo, and the second one, we use the biogas upgrading system. And the third one, it was the electrolyzer, combination of biogas upgrading and electrolyzer for power to gas. As I said, I want to show you today the result of environmental assessment. I think it was in Germany and also in the Berlin case study important, and we also delivered the information for the tool in the LCA. So the first of all that here you can see, the power to get the CHP system at the moment is a better option in Germany, because with the electricity mix that we selected for 2014, it's still with the coal electricity. So if the wastewater treatment plant operator use this biogas in its own and produce its own electricity and heat, it's better than to upgrade it and inject it in gas grid. So, and the second, you can see if you use the power to gas, you can decrease a little bit the green global warming potential in the LCA, but it's not that high. And in the next step, we also compared the electricity mix of Germany in 2030. We have a lot of renewable energy, so it would be a good option. So we can reduce the global warming potential in this plant if the green electricity is in grid. So and also with the power to gas, you can see we can decrease the global warming potential in this plant. So as a take-home message, biogas upgrading and injection in the gas grid at the moment is no reduction of the global warming potential. Better to produce electricity with the CHP system and substitute the current power mix with a high global warming potential. But in future, as I said, in the 2030, it can decrease the global warming potential with the green electricity in Germany. And also regarding to power to gas, it can decrease the global warming potential, but if the electricity used for this process is a green electricity, so renewable electricity. We also did a lot of economical research for this process, but at the moment the power to gas is with a high investment and operating costs, so it's not at the moment a good option. So it was from my side. Thank you a lot, and if you have questions, you can ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Mehdi, for the presentation. We move now south to Croatia, to Zagreb, and Bojan Ribic will be the presenter. Bojan, please go ahead sharing your screen.
Okay, thank you, Ginter. Can you just give me a brief feedback that you can hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Can you see it?
Starting. Looks good.
Yeah, it is good. Okay, thank you. So, my name is Bojan Ribic. I come from Zagreb City Holding. We are one of partners on the REEF 2W project, and we were in charge of doing the pilot location in Croatia, obviously, together with the Regional Energy Agency. What we did in the first idea for the pilot project was the actual wastewater treatment plant in the city of Zagreb, but during the project development we decided that maybe it makes more sense to have wastewater treatment to have the pilot in the Zagreb agglomeration. Zagreb agglomeration is basically area surrounding the city of Zagreb. It's northwest part of Croatia, as you can see on the map. Some main data, of course, in Zagreb agglomeration, the most population lives in the city of Zagreb, so the total area is something about 1 million inhabitants. So far, the only wastewater treatment plant that we have is the one that I mentioned earlier, is the one in the city of Zagreb, and the other one that is being constructed is in the city of Zabok. That wastewater treatment plant is the one that we'll use for our pilot location in order to introduce to them other solutions that they may take into the consideration. Zabok wastewater treatment plant, as I said, they are doing the, I would say, usual wastewater technology for the wastewater treatment plant. Their population is around 9,000 inhabitants. Size of the wastewater treatment plant, it's much larger due to the fact that they have plans to use the wastewater from the other areas in this county, and these are the sum. And in the table you can also see the other some other figures, especially the sludge amount and the total amount that will be expected annually. This is the layout of the wastewater treatment plant in Zabok. What we suggested and what we did in our feasibility study. First thing is, as Pavel mentioned earlier, in Croatia case, the focus is on co-digestion. So first thing was to introduce the possibility to use a bio-waste fraction of municipal waste. In Croatia, this is in Croatia regarding the waste management since 2017. We have a legal obligation to start to separate our bio-waste. So we saw this as one big potential to energy potential to be used in the wastewater treatment plant if it's possible. Other thing is anaerobic treatment. As I said, we have obligation to build a lot of wastewater treatment plants in Croatia, but usually anaerobic treatment is not something that's been considered so far. And of course, in idea is to have co-digestion, sludge and bio-waste. Third thing was the how to use more efficiently if you have AD, how to use efficiently the biogas besides the standard electricity and thermal production. Also to have to have a biomethane production, and of course at the end you will have increased amount of the sludge production or the digestate. So idea is to use it as a soil improver in the agriculture. So, we did a really deep analysis of all information, all the data that we had about mentioned location. So total amount of the municipal waste, the potential of the bio-waste, the expected amount of the bio-waste, also of the collected waste, and of course we did the biogas potential and all of these information are part of our case study, and they are all part of the feasibility study that we did, focusing only on the wastewater treatment plant in Zabok and the potential that they had at the moment, that they have at the moment. We did also the calculation for that, and of course, as I mentioned, we are thinking that there is some land necessary to utilize the sludge. So we also did a calculation how big land size should it be to properly use that increase of the sludge production. Something similar like the MECD mentioned in Berlin. We also did the scenarios. First scenario was status quo or business as usual. So they have the wastewater treatment plant and they produce the sludge, and afterwards you are finding solutions, let's say, to use that sludge. Fact in Croatia that the sludge treatment is not yet solved, I would say. The main challenge is there are some limitations regarding its usage in the agriculture, and of course we don't have any incineration plants, so we are not incinerating at the moment any of the sludge produced in Croatia. Having in mind the obligation that I mentioned regarding the separate collection of the bio-waste, second scenario was to have AD, basically anaerobic digestion on site, so to have one extra step in the process. The main reason for that is, of course, to utilize the bio-waste, so the separately collected bio-waste from the Zagreb agglomeration, and at the end you will have biogas production, so you will have the renewable energy production, and you will use the sludge or the digestate in the agriculture. And the third scenario was something a bit different. So we said, okay, if it's a problem to do any extra construction in the current wastewater treatment plant, let's then use the sludge and the bio-waste in the dedicated biogas plant, that is existing at the moment. But of course, this is remote biogas plant. In Croatia, we have, I think, about 30 biogas plants. Their main idea is to their main source of energy is energy crops. We don't have, so far, we haven't had any construction of the biogas plants plant that can use also the bio-waste, especially the municipal bio-waste. But this is something that will in the future, I'm sure arise, and there will be more and more biogas plants, or maybe the current biogas plants will be upgraded in order to be able to utilize also treat the separately collected bio-waste from the municipalities. So in this scenario 3, we have the same thing more or less than in the scenario 2. So we have extra renewable energy production, but in this case it's on the site of the biogas plant, and of course the agriculture for the utilization of the digestate. These are all scenarios. As I mentioned, these are just brief overview of the analysis that we did from the environmental, from legal point of view, from economic, of course, and spatial. As you can see in this table, this is a sort of a summary of all scenarios. There is quite a difference from the total amounts of the waste that is required to the end, where you can see that the required land is quite varied. So this is something to be this is something that is developed within the Croatia case studies, and now the municipalities, basically it's up to they are taking this into consideration, which of the what options of this scenario would be most suitable for them. So more or less this is all from our side. And thank you for your attention.
For your presentation. Can you stop sharing your screen, please? And then we, last but not least, we move from Zagreb across the Adriatic Sea to Montefeltro, close to Rimini, and Daniel Limongi will present us the case study from there.
Good morning to every listener. Just a little check. Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Perfect.
Okay.
Please share your screen of the presentation.
Okay. Could you see the presentation?
Yes, everything fine.
Okay, let's start. I'm Daniel Limongi. In these few minutes, I will go to provide to you to present the pilot case of Montefeltro Servizi. Montefeltro Servizi is the smallest company involved in the project. It is a municipalized property owned by the 7 consortium municipalities of the Valmarecchia in the Emilia-Romagna region, and serves a population of around 17,000 in a hilly area with a low population density. The involvement of such a small utility was useful to demonstrate that even in smaller companies compared to the large companies currently on the market, it is possible to improve the energy approach and make the company more efficient. The collected waste contains a large proportion of dry organic waste that unfortunately cannot be used for anaerobic digestion. I'm talking about 617 tons of organic biomasses divided into 2/3 of organic fraction of municipal solid waste, and 1/3 is represented by prunes and other vegetable residues and few exhaust vegetable oil. To increase the energy production potential, not only the collected dry organic material was considered, but also the availability of other lignocellulosic materials collected from agriculture or industrial activities. The company has already conducted a survey of the energy consumption of the different production facilities and offices. The result of the survey highlighted the following average values per year. There is no energy production at the plant at the moment. There is a plan by the company to relocate different working sites and offices in one place to optimize space and working time. For this reason, there is a strong interest in the evaluation of the possibility to identify technologies capable of recovering energy from collected wastes. Gasification technologies represent one of the most probably options, as it can be used with locally available materials, offer the possibility of combined electricity and heat recovery, and can be switched on and off as required. The other interesting aspect of the gasification process is that the end products are ash and biochar. The ashes provide inorganic elements that can be reused in agriculture and could also be used as inert material in building or road construction. Biochar is a carbon concentrate that can be used in agriculture to retard the carbon to neighboring plants. All three scenarios that we evaluated in terms of gasification involve the energy production from photovoltaic for a total of about 19 megawatt-hour per year. Three different scenarios are considered. In the first scenario, only the biomass already available on the treatment plant form without the organic fraction has been considered. In the second, the available biomasses have been integrated with the exhaust mushroom litter. And in the third scenario, all available biomasses, including organic fraction of municipal solid waste, were considered. Let's go ahead. This section will provide a brief analysis on the advantages of renewable energy use in the treatment plant of Montefeltro Servizi, according to the results obtained using the REEF 2W tool. The results are based on the actual energy consumption provided by the company and take into account the possibility of installing photovoltaic panel on the roof area of about 100 square meters and the gasification system that can be used with available organic waste. The following graph shows the total energy consumption in kilowatt-hour and in a standard cubic meter. For a simpler comparison of the two values, standard cubic meter is given in kilowatt-hour equivalent. The potential energy produced by photovoltaic panel could reach the value of about 90 megawatt-hour per year. This amount would be sufficient to cover almost 4/5 of the company's total energy consumption. Furthermore, the energy recoverable from biomass gasification is about 10 megawatt-hour per month in form of electricity and about 19 megawatt-hour per month in form of thermal energy. Considering all values, the total energy producible in the pilot cell could be 127 megawatt-hour per year in form of electricity and 119 megawatt-hour per year in form of thermal energy. In the second scenario, with the mushroom litter, the total available energy could be about 550 megawatt-hour per year in form of electricity and in form of thermal energy about 570 megawatt-hour per year. From the later scenario, it can be seen that the potential energy production of about 1,025 megawatt-hour per year in form of electricity and 1,136 megawatt-hour per year in form of thermal energy would be possible. It is interesting to know that from the first scenario to the third, the scale of the energy production has changed considerably, so much so that the energy production from photovoltaic is almost idle. So, if the possibility to sell the electric energy at the grid, it is possible and could provide an economic advantage, the possibility of selling the generated thermal energy to third parties is much more complicated due to the orographic situation of the valley and the long distance that must be overcome. So, the pilot case in Emilia-Romagna region was conceived by Montefeltro Servizi in the framework of general renovation plan of both the waste collection service and the internal organization. The investments include new vehicles and facilities for about 2,300,000 euros. Okay. Concluding, the pilot case proposed by Montefeltro Servizi fit very well in this context. From one end, the renovation plan improves both the quality and the quantity of the organic waste. From the other end, the REEF 2W installation has the potential for producing an amount of energy to generate savings. Finally, this way, the Emilia-Romagna pilot can represent a sustainable model for small multi-utilities. With this, I've concluded, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
So now we have completed our tour in the 5 countries we have been working. You have seen that we have quite a variety of different case studies in the project. And the final presentation on the results will show you now how we come from this single case study to a joint vision for the Central European Union region. And the presentation is shared by, again, Florian Kretschmer from BOKO and Marco Zlonger from Regea, from Zagreb, from the regional energy agency from near Zagreb. So I don't know who will start, but Florian is already sharing the screen, and the floor is yours.
I will start, but I'm still waiting to see the presentation again. I think now it works.
Now we can see the presentation, please.
Yeah, I will start the presentation and give you an idea on the energy potential we actually dealing with. I want to give you an overview about the CEU region, the Central European Union region, and Marco will then continue with giving you an overview on the strategy and the actions we suggest to further establish, to further spread the energetic use of wastewater and the REEF2W approach across our program area. To summarize again what was said already before, we have different options for energy generation from wastewater: electric and thermal energy out of the digester gas, thermal energy out of wastewater heat recovery. With this technology, we can also provide cold, but we will not address this here. In addition, we have the solar energy, which also can be used for electric and thermal energy provision. Hydropower and wind power are somehow more exotic. They do not contribute to a very big share to the total energy generation. So it should be mentioned here, but it's not that big deal. Interesting for us is the digester gas, the heat recovery from the effluent, and the solar energy generation, the photovoltaics, and this will be addressed in our project and in this presentation now. So we're dealing a lot with energy from wastewater or energy from waste, and we should develop a strategy and things like that. And the question is, okay, is it worth doing all these efforts? Is it a considerable amount of energy which could be activated with our approach, or is it just peanuts and low-hanging fruits are somewhere else? So therefore, before we want to make this, so before we want to develop a strategy, we just want to also provide an overview. What is the potential we are addressing it? And you will see this is quite significant, so it's really worth having a look into this topic. Before we can calculate potentials, we need to have an idea about the inventory of wastewater treatment plants in the program area. You can see here all the countries in the program area. And we use the data. The European Environmental Agency collects data of the entire European Union because all EU countries have to report biannually to the Commission in regard to the EU Wastewater Directive, and out of that you can get some really nice information about the inventory on treatment plants in Europe. In our project, we do not focus on the entire European Union, but only on the program area, which involves those countries shown here on the left. One thing you have to be aware when having a look on the figures later on is that Germany is only parts of Germany involved in the program area. So it's the eastern part of Germany, the province, and the southern parts of the former eastern Germany, and the provinces of Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg are involved. Big provinces as North Rhine-Westphalia or Hamburg and so like are not involved. Therefore, the figures in the treatment capacity does not represent all of Germany, but only parts of it. And the same can be said for Italy. The program area is not all of Italy, but only a part of the north of Italy. All other countries are 100% involved in the region. What we get out of this database is the amount of wastewater treatment plants in the countries. I made here an annotation. These are approximate values because usually the European Wastewater Directive concerns only treatment plants of a design capacity of at least 2,000 population equivalents. The database we have is, in this context, a little bit inconsistent because sometimes there are also treatment plants listed or addressed which are below this size. So smaller treatment plants, we did not remove them from the list here because actually they are small treatment plants, and for the estimation of the potential, it is not so relevant. They only have a very minor share on the capacity, on the treatment capacity, and therefore they are involved here. The only thing is keep in mind that for some countries, maybe the real numbers of treatment plants of a size of at least 2,000 population equivalents might be a bit lower. Anyway, this information on the amounts is taken from this database, and what we also find in this database, among other things, is treatment capacity, so the design capacity of the treatment plants in the country, and the entering load, so the current load of the treatment plants. And these are quite interesting numbers. So in the program area, we have more than 230 million population equivalent of treatment capacity, and the current load is almost 180 million population equivalent. So these are quite interesting numbers. But this entering load actually is the interesting part for our calculations, because this is the current load. This is what the treatment plant has to deal with. One has to keep in mind the data availability varies across the countries. So for Austria, for Hungary, for Poland, the databases are quite consistent. Also for the Czech Republic, for Germany, we have good values. For Italy, it's a bit spreading. We have 85% of data availability for the capacity, which is somehow interesting because usually the capacity, this is the dimensioning parameter, this should be somehow known, but anyway, it's not reported. But what we have from Italy, anyway, we have 92% of the entering load available. So this is quite a good number again, and this is the numbers we need for our calculations. And maybe this value here with the 58%, somehow is somehow related to the data inconsistency here, because what we observe, especially in Italy, that many small treatment plants are involved in this database, and maybe from these treatment plants the treatment capacities are not so clear. But anyway, data basically necessary for our calculations are these entering loads, and they are well available for all countries but Croatia. Croatia is the newest member in our European family, and we had a look on the data in Croatia, and what it seems is that the database includes also treatment plants in Croatia which still have to be constructed. So there's no information on the capacity on the entering load now, because the treatment plants still are not existent for the moment, which is anyway, we have a low data availability, but it's no problem that the treatment plants which are relevant or which are available with the data we have, so the entering load. And for those treatment plants which are not built yet, we don't need the data anyway. The only thing which is maybe interesting to address here is, so let's say 2/3 of the treatment plants still have to be built in Croatia to fulfill the requirements of European Wastewater Directive, which is actually a good chance for Croatia now to build their treatment plants not in the way we built them in the other European countries for decades, but they can just build their treatment plants now as treatment plants of the next generation. They can consider all these energetic aspects, these spatial aspects, renewable energies in designing their plants. So I think Croatia has a very good base now to also apply what we suggest in our REEF2W project. So this is about the inventory in our program area. For the collection of the potentials, then we also want to know the wastewater flow. We made some assumptions how to calculate these wastewater flows, and we have to know what treatment plants are equipped already with anaerobic digestion. This is not from this European Environmental Agency database, but this comes from national databases or expert knowledge. And what we can see is that in our program area, we have about 900 treatment plants now already equipped with anaerobic digestion. The shares also vary widely. In Austria, about every fourth treatment plant is already equipped with an anaerobic digestion. In other countries, there's still very low numbers. So in total, concerning all the treatment plants in the Central European area, about 10% are at the moment equipped with anaerobic digestion. So there is still some potential to think of installing anaerobic digesters. This is okay also for the inventory. And now talking about the potential, this is then the interesting thing. Out of the amount of digesters and out of the entering loads or the capacities of the treatment plants, we made some assumptions. I don't want to go into detail about the assumptions, but we made assumptions to calculate the amount of digester gas being produced, to calculate the potential for electricity and heat generation out of the digester gas, and the potential for wastewater heat recovery and for the electricity generation out of photovoltaics. The figures down here, I think, are quite interesting also in the context of developing a strategy, because it gives us a good idea of what amounts of energy we are talking about. So when discussing of biogas upgrading, we see there's quite a nice figure of gas available actually at the treatment plants across our program area. Also when dealing, let's say, with the electricity generation out of digester or biogas combustion or PV, we see there is quite a potential for electricity generation. But what we also know is that the electricity which can be provided will be needed on the treatment plant itself anyway, at least to large extents. What is of very, very big importance and interest is this big amount of heat which can be generated out of the wastewater heat recovery and also out of the digester gas. So we have more than 40 million megawatt hours per year, which can be generated or which can be recovered from the wastewater. And following some rough estimations, this would mean we could supply, let's say, 2 to 3, maybe a bit more, million of households across our, let's say, program area. And this is an interesting number. Of course, this is not an amount that will solve our energetic crisis or will solve the energy transition. But anyway, it's an amount which is not neglectable. It can be an important contribution to a more diverse energy mix to protect our climate in the future. So it's really a number of a significant number which has to be addressed. And I think these estimations here can give us a strong foothold when suggesting strategies to activate the energetic potential in the waste or in the wastewater and to apply our REEF2W approach. As I said, the heat is very, very important. It's very interesting. Brings us again to the spatial context of the wastewater treatment plants. As already discussed, or as already presented in my presentation before, for electricity feeding in the grid, the distance between the treatment plant and the consumers is not a big issue because electricity can be transported. Same can be said for the biogas upgrading. So if I feed in biomethane into the grid, the question of dimension of distance is also not such a big issue. But when feeding in heat into a district heating grid, then the distance between the heat source, the treatment plant, and the settlement is of importance. Therefore, we made an analysis. We took all the treatment plants out of the database. We have the coordinates, or at least a big share of them is the coordinates are available. And we took the data from the Korean land cover data. This is also European data, giving you information on the location of settlement structures. We used the urban fabric, and we used industrial commercial units out of this database to see where our settlements are. And we made an overlap of the location of the wastewater treatment plants, here on this picture symbolized by a point, and the settlement structures of continuous urban fabric, of discontinuous urban fabric, and industrial sites. And we defined supply distances. We said, okay, all the settlement structures within the distance of 150 meters is within the settlement. So if the treatment plant is within the settlement, no question, heat supply is feasible. The second circle here is the distance of 1,000 meters. 1,000 meters is also not such a big distance. It can be technically be done. Heat supply within 1,000 meters is no big deal. But anyway, low-hanging fruits are within the settlements right here. And all the settlement structures which are beyond the 1,000 meters is not in the settlement anymore. It could be an option also for the heat supply, but maybe not the first target points. And what our spatial analysis showed that the treatment plant, we analyzed those several thousand treatment plants in the program area, more than 1/3 of them are within the settlement. So actually, the treatment plants are very, very close to potential consumers. So this is really a very promising figure we can build, where we can build on. Going one step further, treatment plants in close vicinity or near to a settlement, so less than 1,000 meters of supply distance. Another third of the treatment plants, or even more than 1/3, are near to settlements. And concludingly, the third category, far from the settlements, it's almost only a quarter. So let's say more than 2/3, so almost 3/4 of all the treatment plants we have in the CEU region are within a settlement or close to a settlement. So from a spatial context, the urban compatibility assessment can be concluded that yes, from the spatial point of view, the distance between the source and the point of consumption is manageable. This is no big deal. So it's not only about supplying the electricity we have at the treatment plant, or for instance, the upgraded biomethane, which could be supplied to urban settlements. It's also the heat we have available at the treatment plants in our program area, which can be supplied to the surrounding settlements. So the question of space is no big deal, it can be done. So concluding my part of the presentation, I can say we can summarize the potential is here, especially the heat potential is here, and also the consumers are here. So it's really worth having a deeper look into the strategy. How can we manage to activate a broader use of the energy content of the wastewater or waste, and what tasks or what activities could be suggested to activate these resources and to further establish our REEF2W approach. And this is now where I hand over to my colleague Marco, and he will continue with the strategy idea. The question, Marco, is should I continue with the slides, or do you want to share your screen now?
You can continue. I can just say okay. Next, please, when, okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me all? You can hear me, right? Okay. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here today with you, exchanging thoughts on these important topics. Greetings from Croatia. Greetings from REGEA team working on this project. REGEA is a Northwest Croatia regional energy agency. My name is Marko Zlonoga. I'm a project leader for this project. And today I'll try to bring you, give you some intro or be as much brief and precise and clear on bringing you some key aspects of this regional, Central European strategy that we did together. Of course, strategy is heavily based on 5 regional strategies that we developed through the work package 2, through this project, namely German, Czech, Austrian, Italian, and Croatian strategy. But of course, it is also based on our other work in this program, and especially on recommendations, policy recommendations that were made by our colleague Andre Miller from Adelphi team. Program area strategies envisioned as a higher strategy paper that highlights opportunities and impacts of REEF2W at CEU level. Next, please. And it is aligned with EU Directive 2018-2001 and goals of European Green Deal. We try to do the contribution to the general and overall aim of European Green Deal, which is decarbonization of Europe by 2050. Next, please. So highlighting a bit this first reference is EU Directive 2080-2001. Article 2 says in 2 paragraphs that sewage treatment plant gas and biogas, heat power, sewage water is also renewable energy source, and it is important because we need to harness all the potential we can to achieve those goals that I was telling you just a little bit before. Next, please. So we devised a strategy in 4 parts. I will now go to, so every part has its aim and it has its actions. So first part is the legislative part. In order to do anything, you just need to adjust legal and policy framework in order to link energy, wastewater, and solid waste sectors to maximize their synergy and remove barriers for implementing joint renewable energy sources solutions that are brought by REEF2W. Next, please. So we have like 5 of them here. We need to identify all stakeholders on national levels, which support is needed for removing barriers, and increase support by making additional regulatory pressure so that things get going faster. In that scope, we need to make combined approach across sectoral legislation and policy at various different political administrative levels and connect them. We need to make legal and policy preconditions for every phase of IRS implementation, including sludge treatment, which is, for example, very important topic, as Bojan was mentioning, in Croatia. But I know it's also important topic in other Central European states. And integration of wastewater as renewable source of energy, both in legal framework, but also in energy planning and special planning framework. Next, please. Okay, number 2 part is operational part. What we need to do is to adjust operational models of utilities running VVTPs in order to improve business case of each VVTP. Next, please. So how we do this? We adjust regulations so that utilities running VVTPs can invest also in waste to energy other solutions. we apply renewable energy solutions, solutions based on electricity, biogas, and heat produced from wastewater. I think that Florian was elaborating really before much on this. We need to enable feed-in so that we can feed electricity and gas to the grid. We need to establish municipal separate collection of solid waste in order to add bio-waste from municipal waste in chain for anaerobic digestion in VBTPs and make a bigger impact. And offer holistic approach to sludge disposal. And what comes out of it is we bear in mind that with all of that we support domestic economy, decrease dependency on energy imports, and foster innovation and research that will come out of it. Okay, next please. And there is number 3 financial part that is of course very important because you cannot do anything without financing and the money. So we need to provide sufficient, predictable, long-term financial models and support for RES implementation that is tailored to synergy of energy, water, wastewater, and solid waste sectors. Next, please. How we do that? We have only 2 actions, but they are big ones. The first is to establish a clear subsidies, co-financing, and other suitable financial models connecting European Union and national levels that will foster investments in renewables in VBTP sector and broader. As we said before, we need to extend it to all waste to energy solutions to have a bigger impact. And the second one is we need to establish and promote public-private investments models or private investments models such as public-private partnership, energy performance contracting, or other community-based investment models when we can involve as much citizens as we can. Okay, next please. And the last part, but not least important, is connection part. We call it connection part. Why? Because we want to connect all stakeholders from energy, wastewater, and solid waste sector through national platforms. So we need each country to have a national platform by increasing information, communication, education, and therefore a capacity building. Next, please. So, as I mentioned, we establish a national platform that will connect all stakeholders, both public and private sector, regarding energy, wastewater, and solid waste sector, and also others that are not mentioned here, but are crucial. Then we need to raise awareness through the communication, promotion, education that will lead to improving overall capacities. One great idea is to establish a buddy system that can match unexperienced utilities with experienced utilities, unexperienced stakeholders with experienced stakeholders. In that way, we can enable a transfer of knowledge and transfer of experience. And then we need to connect VBTPs on community energy model. Citizens participate and are more aware of energy sustainability that is provided by VBTPs to their communities. Also, we cannot stop with the transnational cooperation. All this has to be with promoting and fostering transnational CU cooperation and broader, I should say, that in this way activities and investments will bring a bigger impact. So I'm not talking about doing this in national borders, but broader, as we did this project. So Florian,
so
you can...
yeah, I will continue.
Energetic potential.
This was quite a lot of information to summarizing what was said. Our estimations on the available potential showed that we have really large amounts, especially of thermal energy available at our treatment plants in the project area. So it's really a good idea to activate this potential, which is still fairly unexploited, because this potential can contribute to the energy transition and play a role in a more climate-friendly energy system of the future in not only our single countries, but in our entire union.
Okay, I can say that As you saw, we structured the strategy in 4 major parts: a legislative, operational, financial, and connection part. And I would like to stress once again this directive of European Union that recognizes wastewater as a renewable source of energy, and we must take point of that and use this to harness the potential that we have for renewables in this sector. And we need to link energy, wastewater, and solid waste sector in spatial context with mind. You can go to the next slide. This is our take-home message. So in spatial context, having in mind, we are merging energy, wastewater, and solid waste with having a bio-waste especially in mind, so that we can fully use the potential that Florian was talking about and to harness as much out of it as we can.
That's what we had. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Florian, and thank you, Marco, for showing the broader picture of the outcomes that we achieved. In the meantime, there have been some comments in the chat that I want to raise. The first question that was done already some time ago was if the integrated sustainability assessment will be also used after the project, or what are the plan for this? Can someone wants to reply on this?
Well, I can start. When dealing with energy supply, let's say, and dealing with the energy transition, as our last slide, our take-home message was, you have to deal with different aspects. So it's not only about finding sectoral solutions, but it can only be a sustainable solution if it's a multidimensional solution. The ISO, the Integrated Sustainability Assessment, is one suggestion, one idea, how one can integrate different perspectives in the assessment process. Of course, there are different ways to integrate different views. ISO can be one thing. This is our suggestion. If it's applied, it's fine. If there are other means, it's also fine. The only important thing is it has to be from an integrated perspective. Otherwise, it's really hard to find good, sustainable, and solutions which are broadly accepted as well, not only by the professionals, but also by the public.
Maybe I can add something. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Gernot.
Wonderful. I think what is very important when we start these planning processes that are really bringing innovation to the fore and also to the ground. I think it's very important to also to support kind of learning processes within the stakeholder communities that have to decide on these things, and also to give a clear picture of the benefits and also of the challenges that are related to a certain planning solution. I think it's very important to stress that, as you have done in the presentation before, that there is an enormous potential in treating a wastewater infrastructure as regional energy cells. Let's put it like that. And I think we have to support any kind of learning process that brings stakeholders and decision makers to the same conclusion. And so I think this is very important to I think this is very important to sorry, there's a child in the background. This is one part of home office. Sorry for that. Anyhow, it's very important to make visible which benefits and which challenges we have. And I think the consortium, as it is in its broadness and also in its internationality, has brought in very helpful views in order to draft these different issues, and also to be on the to open up perspectives on the different fields that we have discussed and then finally included in the integrated sustainability assessment, which is as such also tested in the pilot studies, and where we can say this is an adequate learning tool. And I think it's especially designed as a learning tool and not so much as, for instance, something that would be put into a formal procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Gernot, for the answer. For those who don't know, Gernot Stöcklener, he is Professor of Spatial Planning at BOKU University, and at BOKU we have been working together, two institutes, the Institutes of Sanitary Engineering and of Spatial Planning on this project. There was another question by Filippo Mazzariol, but Filippo, can you say the question by your own, because I lost my chat here. I cannot read it anymore.
Okay. Yeah, hi. Yeah, my question is, if do you think that it's possible to apply energy storage through hydrogen production in WWTPS? Yeah. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, it's more a technical question. If it's feasible to produce or to store the energy in form of hydrogen that we gain from wastewater treatment plants. Who wants to say something on this?
Maybe I can shortly comment it. This question of hydrogen was partly related in our project, in Berlin project, because there was part related to power to gas production. So this is not only possibility of storage of energy in the form of hydrogen, but also production of hydrogen and transfer of hydrogen into the biogas and increase of the production of biogas this way. So probably Mehdi can comment it more in detail.
Yeah, sure. I think the power to gas, you can install the power to gas everywhere. And if you have renewable energy on your side, I mean, wastewater treatment plant has a wind turbines or photovoltaic. So it's a perfect place for power to gas to produce hydrogen and to inject it in the gas grid. We have also a project, this is green gases in Berlin. So we are researching this option for wastewater treatment plants. So I think it's in the future, for sure it would be possible. And also in German hydrogen strategy now want to produce more and more hydrogen. So I think this option will be in future also for the wastewater treatment plant. Interesting.
But maybe when I add something there, the question is always, why should you do that? Even if you can do it, it's the question of what do you do with the hydrogen? And I think this is a very energy intensive way of producing or storing electricity, storing energy. And I think this is especially justified for very, let's say, highly exegetic uses, like, for instance, really greening steel works and anything else. That is of high value and also needs high energetic content in any fuel and energy source. So I think for that it's good to have it, but when you look at the spatial fabric, I think it's a waste of energy if you use it just for heating buildings. That you can do in many other ways that are easier and also cheaper, and maybe also more feasible from an economic point of view with a higher let's say, carbon reduction potential per euro invested. So I think this is also something that we have to think about in the energy transition, is that on the one hand, we can generate certain forms of energy. On the other hand, we have to more clearly look into the ways of how we use this energy and at which energy levels we use that. And I think this is also a new design thinking approach for energy transition planning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gernot. And do we have any other questions? Anyone else wants to raise a question to the presenters or to the project in general? If this is not the case, I asked Diego Santi to prepare at least for the last presentation. Until Diego is preparing, we still can wait if there are additional questions coming in. It doesn't seem to be the case. So Diego Santi will give us the kind of final points of view from the coordinating organization from ENEA. Diego, please.
Thank you very much, Gunther. I will try to share my screen again. Just a moment. Can you see the slides? Gunther?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, as replacement for Roberto Farina, I also have the task of giving the final speech of this conference. And considering the time, I will try to be very short. First of all, I would like to say that despite of the framework condition that in the last month have been quite challenging due to the coronavirus, the project was very successful and all the objectives have been, I think, fully achieved. So let's start with a summary of the concrete achievements. All these results have already been presented before, so I will limit to some comments. One of the key points was for the project, I think, was the good collaboration established among the partners, following a positive dialogue between the university and research center from one hand, and companies and multi-utilities from the other hand. This was a precondition for the achievement of all these results. I would like to underline that the basis of our work was the realization of a tool that guides even less experienced users in evaluation of the energy scenarios in a simple and clear way. And this was indeed the first goal of the project, as Florian have illustrated before. A second key point for the project, I think, was the attention paid not only for the technical aspects of the problems, but also for the legislation and the bureaucracy issues to identify obstacles and barriers and drawing suggestions and recommendations for policymakers. Concerning the 5 pilot demonstration cases, they have been presented widely before, so I don't have further comments, apart that the multi-utilities involved in these pilot cases will continue its collaboration through a platform for the exchange of information and experiences in order to reduce the impact associated with the treatment of wastewater and organic waste. Then, the numerous training courses held in all the 5 participating countries gave us the relevant feedback from the users of the tools and allowed us to improve the final products in a way that would not be possible without these courses. Local and national stakeholders have been trained for future implementation of the project vision. Then, for deeper evaluation, we have established the register of qualified experts. First group of them have been identified and trained, and they are available, offering their experience in the energy management of plants and urban areas in the next year, and will continue to collaborate for improving the tools. This is the results we have achieved. Considering the outlook for the future, we have to consider that the project is quite finished, but the website, through the website, the users can get many other things. We'll continue to get information on all the REEF 2W issues, on the experience gained during the project, and on the pilot demonstration cases. Then they can get access to the REEF W tools, all the tools, to the guidelines, reports and documents drafted during the project, and to the strategy and actions plan set up during the project. Finally, they can get assistance through direct contacts with the partners that are committed to continue their collaboration, and through expert advisors for deeper evaluation of solution and further realizations. Then I think that last but not least, through the website is available, or will be available in the next days, the final book of the project, Sustainable REEF 2W Implementation Experiences and Lesson Learned. And this book contains real guidelines for public administration and show how best results, both from the economical point of view and the environmental point of view, can be achieved through a dialogue between public administration and multi-utilities. I finished my concerns, my comments, and I think that the REEF W team thanks all of you, all the attendants, for attending this conference. In the next days, in the next few weeks, the project will terminate, but the results will continue to be active and available for potential users. And obviously, all the project partners will be happy to give our contribution to the improvement of the quality of life and the urban context. Thank you very much.
Thank you for summarizing the result of the project. Maybe you have to mute your microphone, Diego. We have some strange noise. I think now we still have the noise. But I would like to, you correctly pointed out that the results will be available on the website soon. final ones, but also I want to add that also the presentations from this final webinar will be available from the website. So we will make them available for all the participants, and if you have registered yourself for this final webinar, you will get the information when the files are available via email. So with this, I would like to thank you all for participating in this final event of the conference and of the project. And I hope you had some interesting hours and got some information that helps you in your future work. Thanks also to all the presenters, and also thanks for Filippo for organizing and hosting this final webinar. With this, I would like to wish you a nice remaining day and all the best for the next weeks, and we also hope that we maybe have the chance to meet in person again soon. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
So thank you, Gunther, also for your presentation as an anchorman. Thanks for replacing Roberto. And thanks also for all the participants. And all the presentations will be available on the REEF website or also by email on request. So thank you very much. Thank you again, Gunther, and all the speakers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.